In what felt like a must-win Game 2 for the New York Liberty on their home floor, the Liberty answered the call, they answered the bell, and they won it over the Minnesota Lynx by 14 points, 80-66. Welcome on in to the wrap-up presented by AT&T. I'm Sam Ravech, and we are joined for the very first time by Maria Marino. Thank you so much for being here, Maria. And you matched the shoes, too, which I really appreciate.
We did not plan. We did not plan this, but Sam, we got ourselves a series. Let's go.
Unreal. And you know what? Let's start here, because there was so much pressure on the New York Liberty, not only coming into this series alone, but coming into this game. Personally, historically speaking, no, this wasn't a must-win game in the sense that the series would be over, but it kind of was a must-win game for New York. What was the biggest difference in your mind from Game 1 to Game 2? How were they able to close it out?
Well, first of all, I did consider this a must-win for New York. I mean, you were favored in Game 1. You have home court advantage. You're the best team in the league all year. Not to mention, you had a 15-point lead with under 5 minutes to go in that first game. The first team ever in the WNBA playoffs to then go on and lose a game with a lead like that late. So in my mind, New York really, really needed this one badly. They got off to a hot start again, but the real difference, and you mentioned it, was just closing out the game. The poise and execution down the stretch.
Yes.
The game script was actually very, very similar to Game 1. Strong first quarter for New York. Minnesota doesn't go away. They keep chipping away, cut the lead to 2 in the fourth quarter, but the difference was the final 5 minutes, New York closes on a 14-2 run rather than letting Minnesota take this from them again.
And it was kind of at the same juncture, too, in the game. In the fourth quarter, with about 5.5 minutes left, Minnesota was on a run once again. They bring it within 2, and then New York was actually able to flip the script and get some crucial defensive stops. But let's go ahead and take a look at this game, too, because it was exciting. And, oh, by the way, there were 18,000 fans in the Barclays Center. That was a record for a WNBA game. Breanna, Stewart, and Sabrina Ionescu looking to bounce back here. After a less than stellar Game 1 performance. Here's Sabrina getting it started early on in the first, long-range 3. Later on in the quarter, off of a Lynx miss here, Sab and Stewie linking up again. Maria, these two have been so integral to the success of this team this year, and they showed up big in the first quarter.
Well, you knew that they were going to come out swinging in Game 2. They both shot poorly in Game 1, and they're the leaders of this team. They needed to set the tone.
How about the emergence of Benijah Laney Hamilton? She had surgery back in July on her knee, but she was so massive for this Liberty team today.
She was hitting her shots, and it was clear early on in this game that she was going to be the X factor.
Here she is again, gets it in her corner. This is her spot, right?
Oh, yeah. She loves that corner 3. She was feeling it, and I have to give Sandy Brondello credit for staying with Benijah Laney Hamilton throughout the game.
Here she is again, Laney Hamilton, picking up where she left off in the first half. Little fadeaway jumper in the paint. Lynx are not going to go away in this one, though. Courtney Williams, who was quiet in the first half, goes back to her bread and butter, hitting the mid-range jumper. Lynx cut the lead to 6 now. A minute left in the quarter. Stewie swats one away here. I mean, she was incredible on the offensive end and on the defensive end here today. In transition, this is where the Liberty made their money. Stewie with the block on one end, the triple on the other. Liberty up 8 after 3. Now, here we go, Maria. We go to the fourth. Liberty up 7. Jonquel Jones going to drive and kick to Courtney Vandersloot. Knocks down the 3. New York goes up 11. That was Sloot's first points in the entire game. But here are the comeback kids. And it felt like we were watching the same movie again.
I know. I was really wondering here, how are the Liberty going to respond? Are they going to panic? But they didn't. They really stayed together and stuck to the game plan.
So the Lynx, who trailed by as many as 17 points, cut this to a 2-point game. Corner 3.
I remember seeing that shot and thinking it was going to come off short, and she ends up drilling it.
A little too much dribbling here for Courtney Williams. How about Phoebish?
Oh, wow.
First points of the game come with 1:30 left in the game, and it was the dagger.
Is there anything this Rook can't do? Even without hitting a shot all game, she makes arguably the biggest shot of the ball game with the dagger to put Minnesota away.
80-66, the final in Game 2. New York evens it up with the series going back to Minneapolis, and the Target Center is going to be ruckus come Wednesday night. So All right, let's break this thing down a little bit more, Maria. As great as the Liberty looked in the first and second quarters, like we said, it still kind of felt like we were watching the same movie again, and you were just kind of waiting. Are Minnesota, are they going to be able to turn this thing on and really make it a close game? And they were once again. I mean, what has happened in these last two games so that Minnesota has been able to get back into it?
The identity of this Minnesota team starts with Napheesa Collier, who is relentless on both ends of the floor. And the team identity is really, we are not going away. They're the type of opponent where they're not going to let you lose. You have to go out and win it.
Sure.
Like, they're not going to roll over. And so they just kept at it. And the other thing that really keeps them in it is just their discipline on defense. And here you see Napheesa, once again, she didn't get as many shot attempts this game as she did previously. But when it mattered, she was making plays. She did get in a bit of foul trouble as well, which I thought was a factor. Some
questionable foul calls, by the way. I mean, if we're being honest, it was getting a little bit chippy there.
I felt like the physicality, they weren't letting it go as much, especially down the stretch in this game like they did in game one. I felt like the refs they tightened up a little bit. I was happy to see there weren't too many foul calls. It didn't destroy the game flow or anything like that. But it was something that Napheesa in particular had to adjust to because she's so aggressive defensively. You see her constantly, forcing jump balls and things of that nature. And here and there, it bit her.
Betnijah Hamilton.
Yes.
I mean, can we talk about the unsung hero for the New York Liberty today? Because we said it. She's been dealing with injury. Her knee has not been feeling 100%. Coach Brondello has said as much. She had 5 points in the first game of this series. She comes out, drops a career high, 20 points in the postseason. Oh, by the way, she had 41 points this entire postseason, Maria. How big was she today?
She was everything. I mean, you need that third scorer. And it wasn't Jonquel Jones tonight like it was in game one. And so then you have, the nice inside-outside game between Sabrina and Stewie. Then you throw in, okay, who is going to be that third scorer? Can we just take a moment for Betnijah Hamilton, who I refer to as the OG All-Star of this new era New York Liberty? Remember back in 2021, this was kind of before the emergence of Sabrina. This is pre-Stewie, pre-JJ. Laney was that all-star, and she scored 25 points in New York's lone playoff game that year. She is that woman. She can do this. And so it was just so awesome to see her, knowing that she is able to contribute for the most part defensively, but she had a cleanup knee procedure during the Olympic break. And so maybe not 100% as Sam mentioned, but still out there, still bringing the energy and just shooting with confidence, being decisive with the ball. Laney, you were everything. You were everything that the New York Liberty needed.
And the last time that she had 20 points in a game was before that knee surgery. You got to go all the way back to July to find the last time that Betnijah Hamilton had 20 points in a game. So a tremendous performance for her. She was the X factor for a lot of folks coming into this entire final series, and she showed up big time today with the series going back to Minnesota. And speaking of Minnesota, let's flip the page here to the Lynx, because you and I were talking post-show, I don't know, even if you're the New York Liberty and you're looking at this game on its face, yes, it was a 14-point win, but I don't know how great you feel about how you played the first two games at home, and Minnesota did their job here.
Right, and I think for Minnesota, there's no added pressure here. Unlike after game one, when all of a sudden the pressure for New York skyrocketed, I don't feel that's the case here for Minnesota. They escaped New York with the series tied. They did their job. They must be feeling pretty good here. I'm not saying look, of course, after a loss, you're not going to feel great, but there's zero panic here. If you're Minnesota, you're feeling okay, we're in a manageable spot here. We're heading back home. We're kind of sitting pretty right now. We're kind of right where we want to be. We didn't necessarily expect to be up 2 games on the top team in the league. So all good for Minnesota. It was really just the execution down the stretch, and you have to credit New York for preventing Minnesota from getting those shots that they wanted to get, that they hit in game one, for clamping down on defense and being disciplined. New York just really made sure they didn't repeat history in game two.
Minnesota, it's been well documented now. They trailed by 18 points in game one. They came back and they were able to win that game in overtime. They trailed by 17 points here in Game 2. They cut it to a 2-point deficit and nearly stole another one on the home floor of New York. Just weren't able to close it out. We talked about some of the deficiencies from Minnesota and Cheryl Reeves' squad today, but if you could kind of summarize a couple of things that went wrong from Minnesota today, what do you think those are, and how can they clean those up?
Well, I mean, in Game 1, they shot 50% from the field. They shot, like, I think 48 or so percent from 3. So tonight, it wasn't coming as easily, and they were fine from the floor, but they weren't very efficient from the three-point line.
Yep.
And again, that is a result of New York doing what they need to do and just sort of being all over them. Bench scoring was a thing in Game 1 for Minnesota, not so much in Game 2. I thought Natisha Heidemann couldn't quite get going as much. You know, you always need an X factor, and I didn't feel like anyone really stood out on the Minnesota side of things as sort of emerging as someone that's going to win you the game.
And I give Sabrina Ionescu a ton of credit for what she was able to do on the defensive side of the ball today, right? I mean, she had the 14 points in the first half, only 1 point in the second half, but she knew her role, and her role was to cause havoc on the defensive end in that second half. Minnesota, 10 turnovers in Game 1, 20 turnovers here in Game 2. That was a huge, huge reason why they just weren't able to complete the comeback in this one.
Right, and Sabrina's first 5 points of the first quarter were in transition, right? Coming off of steals, off of turnovers. And the beauty of when you focus on the defensive end first and let offense come from that is defense doesn't take as much like mental energy, right? It's just effort. It's just effort, and you're just trying so hard to disrupt the other side. And then when you do that, it ends up making your offense come so much more naturally. Once you start hitting shots, the confidence starts flowing, both for you and the team as a whole. That's exactly what happened with Sabrina. And, you know, I have seen Sabrina. She is able to just get that Barclays Center crowd going. And especially when she gets them going early, I just really feel like all of New York, those 18,000 fans, were on the New York Liberty side.
What an atmosphere that was today, too. I will just say, what went wrong with Minnesota? Minnesota has improved drastically in really 2 areas from last year to this year. One being three-point shooting, the other being on the defensive side. They were first in the league in three-point field goal percentage this year. They were second in defensive efficiency rating. You cannot have your 2 best three-point shooters have the night that they had on the same night, right? K-Mac can be off in one night, Carlton can be off on one night, but they can't really afford to be off on the same night.
And what's crazy is, as you mentioned, they were still in this game, even with their shooters not really converting from 3. But that could be the difference here moving forward in the series. I do wonder, when are we going to see the Bridget Carlton game? Because she really doesn't get held down for long. New York has done a really good job being mindful of where she is, being mindful of being out on the perimeter. That's where, if you ask me going into this series, where is the advantage for New York? And it's the same thing that Becky Hammon talked about when the Aces were playing New York. Defensively, New York has gotten so much better this year with the addition of Leonie Fibish, particularly on the outside. Her size at 6'4", it makes it really, really tough to match up with them. And so if they're able to defend without fouling and they're able to stay disciplined, again, it's really, really difficult to get past New York. I think where they went wrong in Game 1 is they started playing scared. They started playing, you know, afraid to lose rather than playing to win the game down the stretch. And so far, anyway, it seems like they've learned from that experience, but there's a long way to go.
Yes, this is a long series, and right now we're even. So a lot of our predictions at the start of this thing were it's going 5, right? And I don't know. I don't think our predictions have changed. We'll get to some more predictions, and we'll talk about Game 3 in just a bit. But let's go ahead and take a look at Game-Changing Connection presented by AT&T. What was missing for New York in Game 1? I think we could both agree efficiency would be a word that would come up, specifically efficiency from Sab and Stewie. Well, in the first half alone, they combined to score or assist on 37 of 49 first half points, specifically on the Stewie front. She had 21 points. It was her 9th finals game of 20 or more points, trailing only one player, Maya Moore, for most in finals history. What do you make of these two today and how they were able to team up?
It was well documented after Game 1 how poorly these two shot from the floor. I think Sabrina was 8 of 26 from the floor. I think Stewie was 6 of 21 in game one. So again, I would say the two real leaders of this team knew, like, this is on us when they dropped game one. And so they came out with such an urgency. And what I noticed, particularly with Sabrina in the first quarter, her shot selection was much more crisp and just much smarter. There was a graphic on the ESPN halftime show talking about she was 0 of 8 on contested shots in the first half of game one. That means she took 8 shots that were not necessarily great shots, and she didn't make any of them. And then in the first half tonight, she was 1 of 3 on contested shots. I don't care so much about the efficiency in that scenario. What I'm looking at is she's being smart about what shots she is taking. She's not forcing things. She's letting the game come to her. That's exactly what she did.
Took 47 shots between the two of them in game one, like you said, and they made 14 of them. Right? I mean,
and not to mention with Stewie, a finals record 7
unbelievable
steals. So once again, what happens when you dial in defensively and turn that into offense? It's only good things can come from defense to offense, because once again, it's just, you take the thinking out of the game, because you just, you focus on D. The next thing you know, you get out in transition, you get steals. Not to mention you're wreaking havoc on the other team.
Sure.
You're just then putting the other team's defense on its heels and putting your teammates in a great position to succeed. That's how Stewie got it done tonight.
Yeah, Maria, I think it's interesting too, because Stewie obviously is, she's the most winningest college player, and now going into the WNBA, like, she has won everywhere she has been. And I thought it was really fascinating how they talked about learning how to play through difficult times and learning how to play when things aren't going great. And we saw Stewie in game one, had the chance, at the free throw line. She had the chance to make the layup at the end there and missed, both opportunities. But she came out and flushed that performance and is like, no, I'm going to come out and do exactly what I do in the postseason.
That to me is the signal of greatness, right? When you, 1, take accountability, and 2, realize you have the power to change the outcome. That's what Stewie accomplished here in game 2. She went in knowing, I am still good. I am still one of the best players in the world, okay? I had some tough breaks in game 1. What's interesting about her legacy thus far, you mentioned like winning at every level. And by the way, Coach Gino Auriemma in the house in Brooklyn tonight. I have to say, I called that this morning. I'm like, Gino's got to be there. Like, he's got to be like
that, right?
Now, granted, I'm sure he was having quite an interesting time with Nafisa Collier on one end.
We should have mic'd him up, right? I mean, how great would that have been?
But, Stewie, like I said, just taking ownership and being able to change that outcome. She had the power to do it, and she did. And that's not easy to get back up from. That was a real heartbreaker in game 1.
All right, so those are our game-changing connection. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the key plays in this game, because, we talk about Minnesota and their potential as a three-point shooting threat. Well, the Liberty as well have come out firing early on in the first quarter. Whether you talk about game 1, what they were able to do from the three-point line, Sabrina Ionescu has been like the best shooter in the first quarter through the first 2 games of these finals ever. They drained 5 3-pointers in the first.
Again, it's when you lose a game the way that you did in game 1, you better come out hot in game 2. And Sabrina, it was all about setting the tone and just giving her team that belief in themselves. And they did that, and they got the crowd going. It was so imperative that New York get off to a good start, because you don't want to be in that mode where you're starting to have the doubt creep in. They never really let that happen. Even when things got a little tight late in the game, they stayed with it and just stayed poised.
11 threes in the first game for New York, 13 here in game 2. They are out shooting the best three-point shooting team in the league.
And you know what's crazy, Sam? So in game 1, I just couldn't believe that Leonie Fibish had 5 threes and the Liberty did not capitalize and they weren't able to win the game. And yet here tonight, just 1 3. By the way, probably, like I said, one of the biggest shots of the game, but still others stepped up. And Hamilton. And by the way, I do think that Minnesota was very much zeroed in on Phoebish. Like they were like, we're not letting her beat us again. And that probably opened things up a little bit for Breanna as well.
Let's take a look at the aforementioned three that Leo hit, because you mentioned it. Game one, she came out firing. Here's Courtney Williams, dribbles it off her foot. Leo picks it up. She's like, should I take it? Should I drive it? No, I think I'm good here. Bang.
And I love the confidence, not just for a player that hasn't made a shot all game, but also for a rookie that hasn't made a shot all game. Leo Phoebish, don't get it twisted. She has been one of the best rookies all season. She has been incredibly efficient. Her plus minus has been off the charts.
Unreal.
Just about every game.
It was plus 17 today. She had 3 points.
I know. It's incredible. And she affects everything defensively. And just having her out there as a threat, once again, it's going to open things up for others.
All right, let's fast forward here and talk about the Game 3 coming up on Wednesday. And we talked about it at the start of these finals that, the New York Liberty had been in this thing quite a few times, 0 for 5 in finals, now making their 6th. Minnesota's been in 7 of these things. The only difference between the two is that there are 4 championship banners hanging at the Target Center in Minneapolis. So now this series flips back to Minnesota here. All tied 1 apiece. Minnesota did their job. They picked up 1 on the road. And now they go back into their friendly confines here. What are a couple of things you're going to be keeping an eye on in Game 3 and maybe even Game 4?
I think I want to see, Napheesa Collier being more of the focal point, finding a way to get her looks, even understanding that New York is going to know where she is at all times and going to make it difficult for her. I do want to see Kayla McBride and or Bridget Carlton knock down a few threes, which they were unable to do really here in Game 2. Courtney Williams has really emerged as a very clutch player, not particularly known for her three-point shooting, and yet that was what won them the game in the opener of this series. And so I don't expect her to go away quietly. I expect Don Williams to be in the crowd, riling up the audience, because he's just made it so fun, and every time he's there, she just seems to play amazing. So there are, a few things, and Cheryl Reeve is a brilliant coach, and this is going to be, analyzed, and they are going to have a great counter in place, and New York's just got to be ready for that counter punch.
There are some trends that we have started to see play out here through the first couple of games, one of which being New York coming out strong in the first quarter, and then the Minnesota Lynx start to chip away over the next 3 quarters. The WNBA basketball, we play 4 quarters here, not 1 quarter, and Minnesota is winning the next 3 quarters. Now, obviously, you see the biggest difference there. 4th quarter between Game 1 and Game 2. Game 1, -7 for New York Liberty. Game 2, they were +6. So, is this a trend that can continue? How does New York replicate what they did in the 4th quarter today? I think we mentioned it. We're going to continue to hammer it. Defense.
Right. Well, what I'm curious to see is, will Minnesota come out stronger in the first quarter? Because a calling card of the New York Liberty really all season long has been first quarters. That has been their strength, and that is just showing you that they're well coached, that they're prepared, that they know the scout. And so that is one battle, but then the rest of it is, how do you maintain and how do you adjust when the other team responds? And with New York in Game 2, once again, it was just staying poised. They didn't really have to counter that much. They just had to continue doing what they were doing. I would expect things to get a little dicier in Game 3 because, Minnesota is going to be energized on their home crowd. And this is a really good Minnesota team. There was like this narrative going into the season that, if it wasn't New York or Vegas, like, oh, whatever. But Minnesota has shown that they have been the second best team. They've been one of the best defenses all year long. They belong here. And by the way, Napheesa Collier has established herself as clearly a top 3 player in the world.
No question.
So, you have MVP on your side. Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. And again, whether it shows up in the box score, Fee is going to show up on both ends of the floor. And actually, our friends at Sports Spectrum did the math out, and they said that she has traveled a total distance of an average of 2.9 miles per game. in the postseason, which is by far, in a way, the most miles traveled of any player in the postseason. So it's just those funny little things that don't always show up in the box score that Fee is always anywhere. That anywhere the ball is, she's going to be at. How about the jump balls, too, today, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm surprised. And that's one thing that I thought was interesting when Fee started to get in some foul trouble in game 2. She stays out there, right? She is trusted by Cheryl Reeve, and she also is just so needed out there because she is, I wouldn't say sneaky good defensively. I mean, she's the defensive player of the year, but like for her size.
No, you're right. I agree.
When you look at her and you look in comparison to like a Breanna Stewart or a Jonquel Jones, she can use her length in a way that alters shots. That's super impressive. And she's just, to your point about getting those jump balls, it's like she always gets her hands in there, and she's just like, I keep using the word relentless. I brought up Gino before. I got that word from him. I used to cover UConn, and back when I would talk with Gino about Nafisa, that's the word that he would use, and it just has stuck in my head. Like, she is just that player that she is just never, ever going to give up on a play.
It's going to be fascinating, too. And again, the series just getting started, going back to Minnesota. Before we get out of here, Maria, I got to ask you, predictions, Game 3? What do you think?
I think, so it's interesting. After what happened in Game 1, Game 2 was clearly a New York spot. Yeah. Clearly. Game 3 is one of those where it really feels like it could go either way. But since what we know happened in Game 1, I have been thinking and coming back to, I really could see this being a 5-game series. And so I do expect, I kind of expect perhaps another split. So whether that's whoever's winning, Game 3 or 4, I haven't quite wrapped my head around that yet. I just think, I think we're in for a ride here.
So you don't think the 18,000 fans in the Barclays Center have seen their last basketball game this year?
I mean, look, could New York theoretically close it out in Minnesota? They could theoretically if they play flawlessly, but no, the sample size of what we have in front of us, Minnesota won the regular season series. They come out and win Game 1. Like, I just think it's more competitive than, all of a sudden New York is going to win 3 straight. I don't really see that happening. And so if that's the case, then Brooklyn, make sure you don't have plans week from today, just in case.
So New York able to come back after letting one get away in Game 1. They win Game 2, 80-66. The series goes back to Minnesota for Game 3, and that is the next time that you will see us. So without further ado, that will do it for us here on the Wrap-Up. Thank you so much for watching the Wrap-Up presented by AT&T. For Maria Marino and our wonderful crew, I'm Sam Ravech saying so long. We will see you post-game after Game 3 in Minnesota.